Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, Peter.
You got to grab your microphone there.
Which one am I? This one?
Whatever one you want.
All right,
I can make it
works.
work.
All right, let me get this over here. All right. So how have you been?
You got to get that closer to you, though.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it can almost be right in front of you.
Can I press the button?
No, don't worry about it.
So, how are you since the last time I saw you?
It's been crazy. I did 3 weeks of Babe Ruth down in Florida.
I did.
Got engaged.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Some people might say my condolences, but
No, she's a good one.
yes, I have met your fiance once with you before, and just like I have to say about my current wife, nothing against my ex-wife. My current wife is, she's an awesome. I can't have any bigger supporter than that one.
Right.
I wouldn't be in this position, really, if it wasn't for her support.
Yeah, well, you have to have that.
You do. One of the things that was said to me, actually, I believe it was by Mr. Russo at one point when he was running for representative, was, if this, we won't call it a career, this extra duty for me, anyways. The political world is hell on significant others sometimes.
You have to get a lot of support.
Yes, and fortunately for me, I do have that from my current wife, which is...
You can just say my wife. I'm going to say that.
Yeah, we're both kind of in the same boat, if I remember.
Right,
Yeah,
and she is too, so it's like, okay.
Yeah.
We're kind of mellow about it. Everybody's like,
Yeah.
when's the date? I'm like, she's got a daughter that needs to get through college and then move out, and then we'll talk about getting married. Like, I'm not worried about it. You don't want to let a good woman go.
No, if you find the right one,
Right.
you've learned, hopefully, over the years that you're like, okay. And fortunately for me, I don't think a lot of people know. Some do. My grandmother used to be Betty Champion here in Westfield. She had the dance studio, which is now the Taekwondo studio on Franklin Street. She was here.
I remember that when I first started with the city that was still around.
40-something years she was around.
Hey, move that mic a little closer. Because you sound, there you go.
Granted, we're talking everything Southwick, but I'm bringing up my grandmother.
That's
because
fine.
If it wasn't for my grandmother's dance studio, I wouldn't know my current wife. I knew her from the time I was about 14, and she's a few years younger than me. My grandmother owned the dance studio. Kim danced there for years. We knew of each other, and there's a whole interesting story. Actually, when I graduated from high school, I brought my best friend from Granville when I was living up there. My grandmother used to go to Wildwood, New Jersey every year, and the girls would dance on the boardwalk.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep, they used to
That's
have a
really
band,
cool.
Used to have a band show before they had the big convention center, and
Yep.
I brought my best friend and introduced the two of them, and they actually dated for over a period of about 10 years. They dated for almost 7. And if you had told me 20-something years ago that it would have been her and I married together, I would have said you were insane. But
Mine was kind of out of the blue. Like, I broke up with somebody. I'm like, well, I'll just open up my profile, and 5 days later, boom. It was like a lightning bolt.
Well, my mother told me, you got to stop wasting money going out on dates. It's interesting. Mother's intuition, she's like, it's going to be someone from your past that you're going to end up with. And
Really?
yep.
Wow.
And sure as can be, it was interesting. It came out again. Kim and I, had known each other. We had stayed sort of in contact. She lived and moved back. She grew up in Westfield, moved to Boston after her and my best friend separated for the good. Was there for 20-something years. Actually, she worked for SUNY, DESE, and moved around a little bit. She was in Brooklyn for a year, and her ex-husband hated it. Moved back to Boston, and we stayed in touch. And then the year after the Bruins won the Cup, I had bought a 10-game package. And, I kept saying, hey, let's meet up because you work in Boston. And we did. We finally got to meet up before one of the games, stayed in touch. And there's a whole interesting story that, she realized we were both in situations that were probably not the best for us.
Yep.
And we both, were still not at that point to where we were going to leave those situations, but we reconnected, and it's worked out swimmingly.
That's
She's
awesome.
probably going to be like, why are you talking about us?
Mortified, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it happens, yeah.
But I'm talking about her because she, other than my children, and and they, you know, she's a very, very close second. She's the best thing that ever happened to me.
There you go. Yeah.
But
all right. So what's going on in town?
so what's going on in town? There's been quite a bit going on in town. I mean, I've got my nice little list because, you know, to let everybody know. Unfortunately, myself and Chairman Moglen are trying to get Diane to come out here and do this.
I talked to her when she was here the first time.
Yeah, but she's
Candidate interview. I said, this
Yeah.
isn't that hard. We
No.
can help you.
no.
I've trained God knows how many people doing this over the years. You know, and some of them have, you know, I graduated Patrick to the big time.
Yeah, I mean, I remember coming to you running for for select board. I'm going, how am I going to talk for an hour? And you basically had to tell me, hey, our hour's up.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you know me for years. It's like one of those things people, when they for like some reason, if I may freeze, they're like, you froze? When you get going, we usually have to say, all right, Jason, let's get to your point.
Well, and the thing is the thing we try to tell, and Tina Gorman is great about this, is we're talking about topics you know already. We're not talking you to solve the splitting of the atom.
Well, that's it. You try to.
You know what I mean?
I mean, because you know, my potential guests, like I said, because Diane is still not. She's not comfortable. I'm working on her to try
Tell her
and
to
get
come
her
in
to
and
out.
talk to me.
I said, worst case scenario, come and sit with me. We can't deliberate. We can't talk about too much other than we can talk about the town, anything that we're not dealing with. But you know, if you can get more comfortable, because I remember coming in here that first time, I was.
have her come on
paranoid.
with a guest with Ken once in a while.
Well, we'll work on that.
Yeah.
So I reached out to Doug. So we didn't run into the same problem that we had last time.
That was great. But that was classic.
Yeah.
That was awesome. It was like, okay, so Doug's here early. His guest shows up. And then I see you roll in, and I went, I bet you they didn't talk to each other.
No, we didn't.
But I like the amicable solution about that.
Oh, absolutely. I can't.
That was the fastest half an hours I've ever seen on everything Southwick.
I can't say enough about former Chairman Fox and Doug helping guide me along the way. You know, coming in as a newbie.
It's not easy. People think this is easy, and it's
No.
like, no, it's really hard because you don't. Even if you do know the workings, it's always different when you're on the other side of the gavel, as it is.
Oh,
as it
that
were.
is 100% the case. And
Yeah.
as you know, and everybody knows where I work, and on that side of the things, I am a negotiator and a steward, so I sit exactly opposite.
Correct.
So it's interesting
You
because
have to like now you're when you're on the other side of the table,
You're
you can put a
straddling-
mile, but
yes.
you could put a mile in there. You say, I've walked a mile in your shoes.
it does make me a little more empathetic and definitely a little more knowledgeable. But but Doug's doing, they're working on stuff with those guys on that stuff. We're dealing with some.
And you guys, you've had
Negotiating.
what's the nice thing about this board? It seems like, is everybody kind of has their own
niche.
issue, like area of expertise that they come to the board with, and their own projects that they want to work on. And it's not. It seems to be very diverse in that you got each kind of have your own area of expertise, which helps because you can't be an expert in everything.
No,
And it's good to learn. It's good to learn from, and get the expertise around the town as well, and
Absolutely.
get all the input in it. It does help your decision making.
It does. It's coming in as green as I was, like we talked about it. It was a matter of everybody was preaching change and wanted a little bit of something different. And it's always interesting to me, and you've seen it when we've worked on the city side. People preach it, but for some reason, no one ever really wants to.
That and things move very, very slowly.
Yeah. So
That's something I had to learn when I came to this role, where I had more in the purchasing part of it, right? I had to learn that. That was like, I'm used to like being when I worked in video last, you just bought it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You said, we need this. It got ordered, and a week later it was there.
Well, that's what's obviously interesting for me.
It's a purchasing process.
I just, fortunately, I'm one of three, so I don't have to make all these decisions and signs and stuff on my own, or we authorize one of us to do so. So that, learning those ins and outs, and I'm obviously still learning. And I remember, I've listened to Mr. Didi on his show, and when Mr. Fox was still with us, and Doug and everybody, I go to Carl a couple times a week, obviously.
You have to, yeah.
Because and unfortunately, in less than a year, we're going to lose 34 years of experience with just Southwick. I mean, for someone to have stuck in a position like that, Carl is a Southwick guy. He loves Southwick.
Yep.
This is his home.
Absolutely.
And and I said to him, I know where you live, so I'll still be calling you, and I might even be knocking on your door, because to lose a wealth of knowledge like that's going to hurt.
We talked about that in city government when we had the mayor's show here. Is when you had somebody like a Mike McMahon, who was the auditor forever, walk out the door. It's like, what do you do? Like all this institutional knowledge walking out the door. That's not always easy to replace.
Yeah. I mean, we're dealing with that. I'm sure you're familiar with, obviously you are familiar with where I work. And we've lost over there probably 300 to 350 years worth of experience. As you know, I came
to retirements,
in. Yeah. I mean, I'm one of the old guys.
You were just before me.
Yes.
And I've been with the city 23 years now?
I was 20. I'm 24 going on 25.
Right. You were just before I was.
Yep.
You and Carl and
Yep. So it's been an interesting journey on both sides of it, and what's interesting is, it puts me in a good position in both now to be able to say, hey, I've got knowledge on this side. I've got knowledge on that side. I'm not patting myself on the back, but I'm probably in both positions one of the probably most diversely versed of folks that can be in either position on either side.
Well, it does help.
It does.
It absolutely helps.
So, I was talking the other day about my other foray into supervision and leadership. I wasn't ready then.
No. I agree with that.
And that's one of the problems with the system under which I work. I mean, granted, again, we're still gravitating away.
Well, you got to, in your full-time job, you have to take the opportunities when they present themselves.
Yep.
Because of longevity and things like that.
Correct.
They don't come around all the time.
No, especially in, Westfield's bigger, but it's still small compared to some other departments or anything like that. So I took that opportunity, but you know what? It was a great learning experience.
Oh, sure.
It taught me that, I'm not quite ready. And I need to learn a little bit more. And I needed to, even at 30-something years old, as we all know, and the scientific knowledge is there, we men mature a lot slower than the ladies.
Yes. Absolutely.
And even when we get mature, we have our moments.
Yep.
I learned a lot.
All right, so what's going on? You guys are in a hiatus probably for the summer, like everybody else. But what I know Joe mentioned when he called in, he busted Dan's chops this morning.
I actually saw Joe as I came in. He was putting up the sign for his. That's one of the things going on. He's broke ground on his.
We talked about
edition.
that. Yep, we talked about that. He mentioned something about the ongoing, offgoing. It's kind of like a courting relationship with Suffield about extending the sewer line into Suffield.
That I have not been privy of because of, with the sewer stuff, obviously it's a negotiation process with Westfield because we're attached to that. So I'm not really, I mean, I am, actually, I know of the information. Sorry, Peter, here. I'm just going to get my glasses on.
Yeah, no problem. I know he talked about that they wanted to add Suffield customers and there was enough capacity. They had talked about it for years. And the people that are holding it up is the Suffield doesn't want to pull the trigger.
Suffield is an interesting town. They have a first selectman who kind of has more power than everybody else.
Like the CEO.
Yeah.
Connecticut's different. Connecticut's different.
They are. It's interesting. Yeah.
The first selectman's almost like the town manager.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So, and I haven't really delved into how their exact management works, but I do know that their first selectman is the guy that everybody's got to go through.
Right. And I know that from my fiance. Lives in New Hartford, and she talks about her first selectman. So I'm like that sounds like a town manager in Massachusetts.
Pretty much, yeah. So that would be great. That's one of the things. And we went out on our road tour today. What's today? The last Friday we went out. Myself, Doug, Diane. We went with Randy Brown, Rich Bozak from the DPW. And unfortunately, with the Chapter 90 the way it is, and until these formulas get fixed, which everybody, I guess everybody's been talking about since long before I became a political member.
I think if the communities banded together and really raised a ruckus in Boston, it might change a little bit.
Well, here's what's interesting. As soon as Governor Healy came on and she announced that she was going to put together a rural director, that's Director Goby, I reached out to her already. She actually, we were going to try and do something this month, but I'm going to Las Vegas on vacation on Sunday, and I know Ken is jealous, but
he's leaving too.
Yeah, not that jealous.
I think he's leaving on. Is he leaving this week? He's leaving or the week after you.
I was going to harass him because him and I both love that.
You guys might be there at the same time. I thought
we might overlap. It's a possibility.
Yeah,
but let's see.
I was talking about getting married there, so you know.
Yeah, it's it's nice and quick there.
Right? I know.
And
I know.
So where were we, Peter?
We were talking about the sewer situation.
So, I was out with the DPW director, and unfortunately, he mentioned at the end of it, he goes, "Hey, because what's interesting is my very first meeting last year, as my first meeting as select board member, my first duty was to raise the sewer rates." And I looked at Chairman Fox. I said, "Seriously?"
Well, you had to because
yeah.
Westfield raised their rate.
Yes. Well, and that's what everybody's well aware of that. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of turmoil over the sewers, I guess, over the years.
They put in money to build them, and then people wouldn't tie in.
Well, they did. Well, they finally got everybody who was going to be required based on the system that's there. All the lakes in certain areas are bandied together. But one of the things that I was told the other day was several years ago, when Congamon Road was being done, they did the design work. They spent almost $750,000. It got approved at town meeting to do that, but then when it came forward, everybody shut it down. And it's unfortunate because especially when you have a road open like that, as you know, I mean, for years I've worked in Westfield here and when you get the opportunity to take care of that infrastructure and not rip your road back up.
Correct.
It's
the road lasts longer.
Oh yes, it does. Because no matter how much you try, it's like anything else. Once you break that seal, you're never going to get it back.
Once you breach the road. Yeah, exactly.
So they wanted to put in the dry lines, and unfortunately, you can't. Even putting in the lines nowadays with the rubber seals, the sewer lines are much more durable than the old clay pipes like we have here in Westfield and whatnot. Some clay, some steel, some. But the rubber seals were, because I asked, I go, well, why don't we, every time we open up a road or put a new development in, we should just say, hey, you got to put in dry lines for hookups. And they're doing that in some places. The newer developments are being required to, at least depending on where they are, put in the dry lines in case sewer ever comes that way. But it's tough because you've got in the areas of town where it would really benefit Southwick. I mean, everywhere would benefit if we could do it. You have an aging population, which we've been finding out through the master plan committee. We've got an aging population that wants to stay in place. And when you say to somebody, hey, it's going to cost you a few $1,000s to hook up, and then you're going to have to pay us every year. But I pointed out what's become very interesting is like when we built our house, it was $15,000 just to.
The cost to put in your septic might be cheaper, or not cheaper, more expensive now.
For an average size, the house is being built in Southwick, as people like to call them, some of the McMansions. Those type, depending on your bedrooms, because that's all part of the factors of sizes and whatnot.
Yep.
The leach field system. Our place, just as an example, was about $15,000 to design it, because you can't just, with all the Title V and stuff like that. It's not like when I was a kid when we built our house in Granville. I helped my stepdad put the septic system in.
Right. Now it has to be environmental conservation regulations, depending on
everything, and it's all that stuff.
Sure.
So I mean, you had to perk back then, but it was completely different. So, so you look at that between the $15,000 system or design. Maybe not so much for some of the smaller houses and stuff like that where you're limited, but an average system now for a house of say 1,500 square feet you're looking in 25,000 easy. So I know Westfield has talked about it. I saw it in the paper. The areas that don't have sewer, people that aren't hooked up, they're talking about trying to get folks to hook it up. And I was thinking along the same lines.
I think the mandate is once your septic system goes end of life,
yep, that's exactly.
then you have to tie in. It's not an option.
Yeah. So we've got a couple areas that are pretty close to the sewer line. The schools are hooked up. There's an interceptor line and a pump that comes down behind Woodland.
Well, I think when they did the schools, they added the streets up above it or something.
They wanted to. That didn't happen.
Oh, okay.
So Birchwood, Fernwood, Birchwood is where I lived before I went in the service. That neighborhood is one of the older neighborhoods, and that's the closest one that could get on. But again, the issue is convincing, especially an aging population that probably has a
limited income. Yeah,
exactly. Which that's something we could also work into the plan. But to do my typical long way around to get to where I'm talking about, I had mentioned to Randy, I am going to bring it up. I'm not trying to force this down people's throats, because ultimately I got on because, that's not ultimately why, but one of the things I'm really about is saving the residents money while bringing in money so we can not have to raise taxes as much as we do. I mean, we are very good about that, but whether we raise the taxes or not, the valuation process is done by the state. They come in and say,
yeah, sure,
this is the formula you got to use, and then we've got to go do that, and then the market rates drive those tax rates. So, because I hear that all the time, well, their taxes went up, and I go, well, they did, but they didn't. And most people are starting to understand that now. So, but my goal when I came on this is to find every avenue I can to find money for the town of Southwick, so that'll save the residents and bring in some benefits to the town. There's several things that are on my list about that. But
all right, you want to talk about that after the break?
Well, we'll do the break. We'll go back to the sewer, because I could go on all day about that one.
Okay.
And then I'll end that one, and then I'll hit my other points, because there's a lot of good stuff to talk about.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
Way you do it. You play the guitar on the MTV. That ain't working. That's the way you do it. Money for nothing and your chicks for free. Now that ain't working. That's the way you do it. Let me tell you, damn guys ain't dumb. Maybe get a blister on your little finger. Maybe get a blister on your thumb. We got to install microwave ovens, kitchen deliveries. We got to move these refrigerators. We got to move these color TVs. Move, move. I should have learned to play them drums. Look at that mama, she got it sticking in the cameraman. Oh, we could have some. And he's up there. What's that? Hawaiian noises. He's banging on the bongos like a chimpanzee. Oh, that ain't working. That's the way you do it. Get your money for nothing, get your chicks for free. ain't working, that's the way you do it. You play the guitar on the MTV. That ain't working, that's the way you do it. Money for nothing and your chicks for free. Money for nothing. And your chicks for free. What's that? Look at that, look at that.
Underwriting for Community Radio on WSKB is brought to you in part by Rockies. Over 30 convenient locations throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Florida. One of the nation's largest ACE dealers. Expertise and great product selection in paint, hardware, lawn and garden. That's Rockies. Rock solid service since 1926. On the web at rockies.com.
Hi, this is Harry Rock, host of Rock on Westfield every fourth Wednesday at 8 a.m. Tune in for my view of this place I call home.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Everything Southwick.
We're back.
Easy to bring you in like that.
Pete, you make everything easy.
I try.
So, all right. So where were we? Let me just finish up on the sewer stuff. So, basically, what I said, we'll go back to that. We were talking about the sewer and possibly interacting with Suffield, and definitely we really need to work on getting the Lake Avenue really tied in, because the whole purpose of it on our side
is to stop septics around the lake,
especially with all the we've had all the algae blooms and the E. coli's, and nobody. Depending on where you do the test, nobody can sometimes tell where it's coming from. They think it's the geese, and it's not the geese. And, we've done such a good job. The Lake Committee, the town in general, has done such a good job cleaning that up. We had
and maintaining it.
It's nobody other than the fact that the Indians called it Congamuck. It's not Congamuck like we heard people used to joke when we were kids. And what's nice is you got Dick Reynolds and the Lake Management Committee and the Canal Committee working with the federal government, and it's looking like we may finally get somewhere on the dredging of the canal to the Connecticut line, but there's other dredging plans in process to go around the edges of the lake to clean out some of the coves and whatnot, but there's a lot going on there, so... But to circle back to the sewers, because, me, Pete, with my ADHD, I go off on 180 degrees and turn 90.
Mm-hmm.
So with the sewers, I brought that up when we went out on our road tour. When I spoke to Randy, he said, he mentioned that about the sewers. And I said, well, that's one of the things that's been in my back of my head. As a new member, I just I really needed to get a feel for things, and then with this IMA that we have to do with Westfield, just because the 20-year agreement is intermunicipal
agreement. Yeah, just to make people don't know acronyms, and I hammered the school department early on about this, and they're really good about it.
Yes. Just remind me, because as you know, in the law enforcement world, in the military world I came from before, that's pretty much all they speak in at times.
Yep.
So to go back to that, with the intermunicipal agreement. They started renegotiating that last year. Doug took that over after Mr. Fox left the board. Due to a kind of a conflict of interest angle of it, I was going to do it, but I'm like, no, I can't really. It's kind of an odd spot for me.
Yep.
So Doug's taking that over. They're getting to the point now where it's just a matter of, I believe the attorney's going over it, and Randy just kind of said, hey, just so you know, we're getting to that point. I got to bring it up, and it's going to be to some. I'm not going to say significant. I don't know the number. I don't know the percentage. But you could tell by Randy's tone of voice in his face that it's going to be, it's going to be something that the people are not going to be thrilled about. And unfortunately, the way it works with that is, this is why my argument is for the folks to kind of let's get behind the sewer, because whether you're paying for a sewer rate or not, one way or another, you're paying for it. It's got the rates that aren't covered by the rate payers, they're coming from that other budget. So, my argument for it is I said to Randy and I said to Doug, and like I said, Doug's like, you can have that one. And anything to do with raising any sort of rates, I understand it. I don't want to do it. It's not what I got.
Yeah, the politics part of it is.
It is what it is.
But what people don't understand is, and this was a big controversy in Westfield about the water rates and the sewer rates. They hadn't gone up in years and years and years, whereas everybody around Westfield went up for years and years and years, and now Westfield was falling behind because they needed to make a lot of improvements at the sewage treatment plant as it was.
Yep.
So they needed to be able to pay for that. And where does the money come to pay for that? It comes from the ratepayers or the taxes. So one way or the other.
Both, like in Southwick, it's both.
Right. So. Yeah, so, the
and
rates
Westfield, too. I mean, you got a lot of people that are not hooked up, don't have access to sewers in Westfield as well. But.
Right, and that's why the ratepayers shoulder most of the burden because they're paying to use it.
Yes.
That's why they don't draw general fund tax money for that, as I recall. And this is me sitting in meetings for 2 years.
Yeah.
As the Zoom guy, I learned a lot about a lot, in city government.
Yeah, it's been going to a lot of these additional meetings. Has definitely helped, and even when I don't get to go now, I'm clicking on it. The Zoom thing is great. I know some people weren't thrilled with it, and I know it's going to cost towns a little bit of money here and there, but I think it's the best thing that could possibly happen for transparency. In
a small town, yes.
No one's got any. Well, it's tough because you got the elderly population that aren't really Zoom savvy. Even I just finally learned how to actually set up a Zoom meeting. I know how to get into them, but it's not hard. It's just one of those things you got to learn how to do.
Yep.
So it's just, I think it's a great thing, and I know there's legislation at the state level that that I know the plan, and I'm pretty sure this is going to happen. It's going to pass, and it's going to be a mandate. I'm pretty sure from the state, and I don't think it's a bad thing. Then anybody I can't get to the meeting. Well, now even if all you need is the phone, and if you've got a phone with the Wi-Fi or the internet capability, you can at least. If there's something you need to say or see or do, you can get there. So, but to go back to the sewers, as I've again now circled around to something different again, I think it's something that unfortunately we need to really be. It's a money thing. It's unfortunate. There's just no way around that with anything. And the longer we wait, the more it's, as we all know, the more it's going to cost down the road. So I'm going to start talking about it. There's. My ideas are very similar to what Westfield is proposing on their end. As if you're in a neighborhood where there could be sewers, I think we need to start looking into at least, putting in the interceptors in like Fernwood, the areas that could be more accessible off to start with, off the rail trail and where the line is. To try and start hooking those up, like we talked about the Hudson Drive area with the plan to have the road go through.
Yep.
That the rail trail is right there, so the plan is to tie that in, which would allow us to then tie into the Shagbark area neighborhood down over there, and because obviously the more people that are hooked up, the cheaper it's going to be for everybody. Some of the people now, if you start telling them, look, sewer system, it's not like you can't hire, your friend that has a backhoe anymore, dig it up and put in a new one. You've got to have a system with a license and a licensed and installer and stuff like that. So it's finally getting to the point where to do it, some people they're going to have to take out loans, and they have to take out home equity lines, and to do it's not a cheap process. I know that one of the biggest rubs in areas was, well, it's going to cost me $3,000 or $4,000 to hook up. When your system isn't gone, I understand that, and I have no problem with working this out and figuring it all out. And that's what it should be. When your system is done, you can hook up the sewers. Let's hook you up to sewers. It's gonna cost you definitely less out of pocket right off the bat in this day and age, and in the long run, I hate to say it in this way, that hookup is probably gonna outlive what you would have had to pay on your system, depending.
Yeah, sure.
So it's definitely something, and I'm glad you brought that up, that Joe brought it up. I'm glad there's some additional support outside for that.
I think he supported it for when he was on for years. He's just saying that the hesitancy has been on the other side of the other
Yeah.
side of the line. As
I
it
know
were.
Doug last year was assigned to, I think, basically deal with the Suffield side. We haven't really, we just, like last night or 2 nights ago, we had our marathon, longest meeting I've ever been. We had 3.5 hours
Yep.
with our boards and committees. And, I want to just say right now, I want to thank everybody that came out, and I've heard for years, well, Doug and Russ and stuff were talking about how nobody ever puts in for it. We've changed our system. We were able to apply online. We got, I think, almost 50 or 60 different applicants for all the different boards. And I tell you what, short of selecting the few police officers, firefighters, and other folks that I've had to, sit there and make those decisions, which are always difficult, especially being someone that's sat on that other side of the table. The decisions to fill these boards was, I literally said the other night, this is making me want to beat my head against the desk. It's like I've never seen, when I looked at these resumes, the amount of qualifications for the Conservation Commission, Economic Development. Those were the 2 toughest with the amount of applicants, but I think we did a good thing. It got to the point where we've actually, we went from 5 Economic Development Committee members now to 9.
Wow.
Because,
It's very rare that a board expands nowadays.
well, there was no consensus between Diane. There was no consensus between I and Doug. So, and Doug got to the point. He's like, "Well, do you want to?" So Diane made a motion. I made a motion. We couldn't come to an agreement. There were certain aspects of things that were important to me, and Diane was trying to explain things to me, and I said, "I understand that, but this is where I stand. This is my line."
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, "Well, how about I make a motion?" And what's interesting is the Economic Development Committee in our town, which is, I think it's unfortunate, isn't more active, isn't more integral into the process of bringing in business to the town. They've got a, I learned.
Well, but that's what you need. What do they call it? Joe Mitchell used to be
Community Development Coordinator, right?
community development or advancement officer.
Well, I did ask Carl like last year when I got on. I go, personally, I think it's something we should look into, at least making it a part-time paid position, because I've learned from this. It's a lot of extra your own hours reaching out to people.
Sure.
Emails, talking to people. Like just last night, I went to the planning board meeting, and by the time I got up there, they were mostly done. But I ended up speaking with Andy Reardon from Concom and John Goddard from the planning board. I was there still another hour. And I'm not complaining. I've absolutely love doing this. Getting to know people, getting to even be more involved in the town.
But people don't understand the hours that.
No, I didn't. When I first, I'm like, some people.
I tried to tell you this when you had your interview here to
Yeah,
begin
you did.
with. I said, we sat down and talked afterwards. I said, you sure you know what you're getting into? And
I didn't know what I was getting into.
And I kind of think I kind of filled you in a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
from what I knew from looking from the outside, and knowing a lot of counselors and
Yeah.
knowing Joe
Mm-hmm.
and Doug, that there is that extra component. You see the meeting that's 3 hours. Oh, they only
Exactly.
work 3 hours a week, at the meeting. No, not even close.
I do like to remind the city, Westfield City, although they have subcommittees, I like to say, well, we meet more times than you do.
Probably, it's true.
We actually, when we go into full mode, we're every Monday. But with holidays and things around, it doesn't always work out to be every Monday. But I tell you what, when we hit budget time last year,
Oh, budget's always the worst.
from January to May, I was exhausted between, the shift I work at the PD here and time at the town hall, and then additional meetings with the FinCom and the different department heads. It's like, I'm like, wow. I'm like, okay, that 4-month stint is pretty busy.
Yep.
But fortunately for me, as you know, I'm a people person. And I can talk to just about anybody, and I try to get along, even if there's not a common ground. I will talk to anybody about their opinion and my opinion, and I say, hey, well, I don't agree with you. This is why. So, and that's what's good with it, and that's why it works for me. I can, as you see, here we are. I didn't think I'd be able to talk for an hour by myself, and I haven't even gotten to my list yet. So.
Well, I mean, these are issues that so let's do bullet points.
All right,
like a
bullet
minute
points.
on each one. So what do
right.
we got? What do you got? What's on your priority list for the fall
As
season?
I already mentioned, and we've still got a few left to go, but We, over the last 2 meetings, we've appointed committees and commissions. We expanded the Economic Development Commission to the 9. That's a work in progress. We got to see how that works. Our new system that we put in place with the online applications for the committees and boards
Okay.
needs some tweaking. We found that out the other night. So folks said, well, if there's going to be certain parameters you're going to ask about, just let people know. And I can understand that, but, it's all new. We all started this new. It's different, different process. So we had that going on last night, or 2 nights ago. Some of the other interesting things going on is Doug was signed the first step to start the Wally Spray Park. Of course, unfortunately, it won't be happening until after the summer season, but that's a good step forward. One of the big things we finally got, I don't know if Joe or anybody else has talked about it in the different discussions you have with them, we finally got our green community designation, which that opens us up now to be able to apply for grants for different avenues, which is one of my big things with the energy is, I brought up and proposed the aggregation program. I passed at town meeting. We're working on that, and unfortunately, even though we have our plan in place, even when we do right now, there's like a 12 to 18 month backlog in Boston, which is it's not necessary. If you do the research, this plan's been in place now since '97 in some way, shape, or form. Pretty much everybody, these groups, there's 3 or 4 aggregators that.
What's an aggregator?
Well, an aggregator is basically an energy broker or investor for the town. So with aggregation, what happens is, and everybody can do this on their own. You can choose your own provider. So with the aggregators, what happens is the towns decide to do this, and we had to vote on it at town meeting. And what happens is you now have the option to join the town aggregation plan, which by pooling everyone together, it helps bring the rates down.
Okay. Because you become one buyer.
Exactly, and you allow the city or town to negotiate those rates for you, and it's everywhere you go for the most part. When I've done the research, there's only been 1 year where anywhere has paid during the time when the rates are bouncing around, paid more than what the going rate was.
Because I know I talked to a Southwick resident every day. He's one of the teachers here. He said his electric rates have skyrocketed,
Yes.
Almost doubled.
Yep. So what's good too is once we get this plan up and running, we can negotiate anywhere between 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, up to I believe 3-year contracts that lock it in. Like last year when the rates went crazy, West Springfield had already done this. They were locked in, I believe, at a 9-cent per kilowatt hour rate, and Eversource went up to 22. Wow. So, and
I'm so happy to be in Westfield, honestly, with Westfield Gas and Electric.
I will say
because they're doing that. That's what they do.
That's exactly. So that's the same idea. They go out.
It's a business model, yeah.
Yep. So, and it's becoming popular across the nation. So, hopefully that continues. That is going forward. We're having a Zoom meeting with our energy consultant, representatives from Colonial Power Group, who is one of the larger aggregators here in West Massachusetts, and myself and Carl. We're going to get this settled and start moving the plan forward because it has to be presented to the residents, and they have to look at it and say, okay, we like the way that looks. And there's options where you can go more green, which would bring your rates up a little bit more. But you have options of doing different percentages, different plans. So it's a very good way to save, to protect people from the wicked fluctuations of the market rates.
Yep.
And at the same time, save the money. So we're working on that. The cannabis dispensary thing. So the reason I was at the planning board last night was to see where we're going to go with that. I spoke with planning board chair Mike Doherty. The plan is he said to me, he goes, I want to move this forward, but he needs to know if there's going to be a special town meeting. I am going to request one for the simple fact that the faster we can get some dispensaries in town, the faster we can recoup a lot,
Start generating revenue.
There is so much interest because of our location. We're actually in a prime location because of Connecticut approved it, but Granby, East Granby, Simsbury, Suffield, no licenses coming. Connecticut, 59 licenses, and that's it across the board. I'm sure it will change as time goes on. And that includes cultivators and like the warehouses and other stuff like that. Growers, retailers, cultivators. So and
Processing,
the closest,
yeah.
yeah. So the closest one that's going to be to us is going to be recent, and any time near soon, within the next 3 to 4 years, is Enfield, and that river becomes that kind of like that boundary.
Yeah, it
that
seems to
keeps
be a
everybody
boundary.
over.
Yep.
So it works out very well, and as it is now, people are driving right through Westfield to come here to Cannabis Connection and HECA, and the tax money is why I brought this forward, and I want to get that benefit. So we're just waiting, because we have to change those 2 words on the planning board side. It's approved on our side, but the zoning changes and the planning board rules have to be that rude word of will be allowed rather than are not allowed. Those needs to be changed.
Right, that would have to go to town meeting, but then it would also, as a home rule petition, it would have to go to the legislator for approval.
Yes, and exactly. So
that takes time.
So that, I know, unfortunately, special town meetings cost a little bit of money, but to me, I think to get the benefit in the town a lot faster.
Well, is there any other big items you can get up and added that to the agenda? Sometimes if you can
it's mostly planning
bundle
board.
a couple of things.
Yeah. Well, that I've been kind of waiting to see if there's something that might need to go on town meeting, but we're getting to the point where now we get back into full swing, like you said, in September, with regular meetings and not a summer schedule. By the end of September, we really need to know that we're going to do this. So when I spoke to Mike Doherty, he said, if you can tell me there's going to be a special town meeting, he goes, we can kind of fast track this, get this to where we need to go, get it in front of the folks.
So you're learning the process, though.
Yes. Yep. And of course, it's a completely new process because this wasn't allowed.
Well, not even that, but I mean just the process of getting it out of planning.
Exactly.
And changing the town charter.
Yes.
To make that, because it's in the town charter, right?
Well,
that,
we don't
a regulation.
technically have charters in ours.
So what's the governing rules?
It's bylaws.
Bylaws, ordinances. Okay.
Well, we don't. Yeah, bylaws and town.
See, I'm learning stuff too.
I believe me, I learned it because I came from here, and I'm like, well, the ordinances, and they're like, we don't have those in towns. Cities are ordinances, towns are bylaws.
Don't you wish it would be the same everywhere?
So, yeah.
But anyways,
so that's where we are with the cannabis. Because we have had 2 or 3 people, including Mr. Jaron, who came in here on one of my shows, who was like, did I miss anything? Because people are like, it's passed. It's like, we want to get going. And I'm like, well, it's passed, but we still have that one other step. So my goal is to hopefully get that in front of the town before the holidays, get it in place so we can start moving forward with it and get that tax revenue coming in. Because as we said in our different meetings, our different shows, at our board meetings, unless something changes from the state with this money for the education side, we're going to be looking at an upside down budget of about $500,000 already on the school side. So that's what they've said at our meetings from the school committee. So let's just run down the list quick before with my mouth, we've already almost run out of time. So my big things have been bringing businesses to town. What was interesting is because the Economic Development Committee hasn't had any real direction, I had asked Carl, why don't we look into this and make it a part-time paid position, somebody that can shop. He goes, I'm like, until then, what do we do? He said, well, you can do it. So I believe it. I'm like, okay. So I looked at some of the parcels and I reached out to Harbor Freight, and believe it or not, there was some interest. So I think Harbor Freight would do great in Southwick.
That seems to be a fairly good fit.
And I'm also one of those people that I said when I sent him the email, I said, just so you know, I'm a persistent pain in the ass. So until I hear from you one way or the other, you'll still get emails from me. So he got back to me. He laughed. He said, I loved your email. He goes, so I proposed that to him. Things have gotten busy. I haven't been able to circle back around to him. Now that things have kind of, between I had that shoulder surgery and I'm still doing PT and I'm out of work for another month or so. But so I'm taking advantage of that additional free time to do some extra stuff. But, I've been looking to bring in, I would love to bring in some more viable small businesses, but like some of our new members said, like Frank Grillo, he's one of our new economic development committee members. He owns the launch. He bought the marina. He owns the old VFW. He lives on the lake. He said, hey, we need to the way you got to do it is you got to find it. And we're a recreational community, so that's the other avenue I've been looking at. What type of recreation can we bring to town that we don't already have and promote the stuff that we already do?
Okay.
So that was my big thing, bringing businesses to town. As I said, we went out with Randy Brown and the roads, and I just want to let everybody know, my first year we put together a list. That list is still similar. The roads that got addressed, which were only a few, and it's going to be the same way this year. The budget, with the increase in the cost of materials and, the budgets, they just don't go that far anymore. So that'll come out at the next meeting, the list and where we're looking to go. We got, like as I said, we have Mr. Steinhardt after 34 years is going to be heading off into the sunset to enjoy his life.
Yep.
A little bit more than maybe he enjoys it now, I don't know. But he's been such a wealth of resource. I've heard nothing even before I came to town. Carl is
He's a great guy.
Wonderful guy.
Yep.
Again, another wealth of resource.
You need to have him on before he retires.
I'll work on that.
An exit interview.
Oh, there we go. Little other points. We have a young lady now, Kiara Barber. She's a little 8-year-old girl from Worcester. She's going to be showing up, I believe it's tomorrow at Town Hall.
Yeah, they were talking about that
Yep.
in Westfield
Yep.
too. I saw that from
She is going to every city, town, and hall, and before the end of the summer, all 351 town governments, so to say. What else do we got? Spray Park, I brought up, Wally Park. And again, I want to let residents know, if I haven't got back to you, which isn't usually the case, I know there's a couple that I haven't, and as I said, forgive me, I do have my ADHD, and it's true, I do have it. But I'm also, busier than I thought I'd be, like we talked about, Pete.
Absolutely.
There's more to it than I thought. So
Yes.
please, if you're reaching out to me or need to reach out to me, my phone is, I'm going to tell you at 413-454-3269. Text me if you call me, because I'm horrible with calls because so much stuff comes up as unknown, spam, telemarketer. Lastly,
Leave a message.
Yes, a message, and just say a quick text. I asked that definitely because I'm going to get that right away. And the last big thing that we want to go over, I mean, I've got more that I could talk about, but I want to thank Pat Jubb. He was one of our school committee members. He just resigned, stepped down. He's got family stuff or whatever he's going to do. I didn't ask. It's not my place to ask what reason, but he stepped down. He was a great guy to turn to and talk to. So we are going to be getting with the school committee and doing a appointment in the near future to fill the open school committee member position. The closing for that is August 25th for anyone.
If you want your name in the hat.
Yeah, if you want your name in the hat. So that
Are they
was-
submitting resumes for that to the superintendent or to the town manager?
I'm going to go on the school site.
Okay.
We do that joint thing only when there's a position that becomes open without the elections. This will
Okay.
be my first time. I don't know the complete process right now. I know we help select, the school committee helps select. And that decision.
Joint meeting to fill a term.
Yeah, the decision to fill it would be made by a joint meeting.
Okay.
And so I think those are my talking points. So I got
And that's easy. We're
pretty
all,
much, yeah. I mean, I can't, and like I said, I got up this morning going, how am I going to fill an hour? You know?
Oh yeah, I'm never worried.
And
about that.
what's great is I have you. Our familiarity with each other. We can talk about anything, which, I wasted 15 minutes and you and I did just on
But
life.
usually catching up. Sometimes it's good to catch up because
Yes.
people need to know that you're human too. You're not just
Well, that's true. I'm
one
not,
side, not just the one side.
I didn't get
the
into
public
this for
side.
me. I know there's been all sorts of rigmarole and people think this and people think that. There's nothing in this. Never was be. It's no different than what I do over there. That's my career. I did it because I love it and I like working with people.
Yep.
Same here, and I like to help people. And that's, I talk about it all the time on the law enforcement side. It's not about arresting or fining, and it's same here. It's not about saying you can't do this or you can't do that. It's about let's find a way to make things, if it's doable.
If it's good for the town,
Yes.
let's find a way to
work
make
for
it work.
the town.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and on that note, Pete, I want to thank you once again for having me.
See you in a couple months.
Yeah, unless I can get Diane in here sooner.
All right.
So So let's see. We're August, September. I'll see you in
October,
unless I can drag Diane here,
okay.
and I'll try.
All right, we're out.
All right. Thanks, Pete.